Welcome to Magical Sleep Stories. Relax and let your worries drift away as you get lost in stories full of nostalgia and magic. The wind on the edge of the Hogwarts grounds is never quite the same as the wind anywhere else. It moves differently here. Less like weather and more like intention. It threads through the hills beyond the castle in long, low currents, slipping between stone walls and hedgerows, brushing against your robes, as if it recognizes you personally. It carries the smell of damp earth, crushed grass, and something faintly metallic, like rain about to happen, even when the sky is clear. You adjust your cloak tighter as you step down the worn path toward the paddock. Ahead, Hagrid's hut sits slightly askew in the landscape, as though it has grown out of the ground rather than been built. Smoke curls lazily from the chimney. The sound of something large shifting inside reaches you faintly, wood creaking, something heavy breathing, the distant scrape of claws against stone. You hear your classmates before you see them. Voices scattered across the field. Said it bites through dragonhide. That's not possible. Nothing bites through dragonhide. It's Hagrid. Of course it's possible. You slow as you approach the fenced enclosure where the lesson will take place. Taking care of magical creatures is always like this. Not dangerous exactly, not safe either. Something in between, like standing too close to the edge of a thought you don't fully understand. A figure emerges from behind the hut. Hagrid. He is massive in a way that always feels slightly impossible, as though the world had to stretch to accommodate him. His coat is patched in too many places to count, and his beard looks as though it has collected every season of Hogwarts in it. He waves when he sees you. "Ah, there you are," he calls warmly. The ground vibrates slightly when he walks. You join the others near the paddock gate. There are about a dozen of you, students bundled in varying degrees of caution. Some stand too close together, others too far apart, as though instinctively negotiating safety zones. You recognize a few faces. A boy from Ravenclaw who always looks like he is mentally calculating escape routes. A Slytherin girl who never seems impressed by anything but is currently watching the enclosure with narrowed interest. A Hufflepuff who looks like they might try to pet anything regardless of warnings. And a Gryffindor who is already missing the concept of fear entirely. Hagrid clears his throat. "Now, I know you've had a few exciting lessons already this term." A few students exchange looks. "That's one word for it," someone mutters. "But today," Hagrid continues, "we're starting something a bit more approachable." He smiles broadly. That does not reassure anyone. Behind him something moves in the paddock. You catch a glimpse of shaggy fur, then a tail, then a shape that looks almost like a horse, if horses were built out of storm clouds and bad decisions. Hagrid gestures proudly. Thestrals. Silence falls instantly. It is the kind of silence that drops not because no one has anything to say, but because everyone has too many thoughts arriving at once, and none of them are socially acceptable. You stare. The creatures are unmistakably real now that you see them properly. Sleek, winged horses with skeletal frames visible beneath stretched black skin. Their eyes are pale, almost milky but not blind, watching, aware. One of them turns its head towards you. You feel irrationally, as though it is looking directly through you rather than at you. A student behind you whispers, "I thought they were..." "They're real," someone else finishes. Hagrid nods. "Proper misunderstood they are," he says. "But don't worry, they're gentle if you treat 'em right." You glance at the paddock gate. It does not look especially reassuring. Hagrid continues, cheerful as ever. "Now, I'm only letting you observe today. No touching yet. Just learning their behavior." A pause. "That's good," someone says quickly. "Very good," someone else agrees. You are not sure if you agree, but you do not say so out loud. Hagrid opens the gate. The Thestrals shift. Not aggressively, not nervously, just aware of the change. You feel your stomach tighten slightly anyway. The group moves forward slowly, clustering near the fence rather than inside the paddock itself. Hagrid walks among you, pointing things out with enthusiasm that feels slightly at odds with the creatures themselves. "See that one there?" he says. "She's just had a foal last spring. Proper clever she is." You look. The Thestral he indicates stands slightly apart from the others. Smaller, still enormous in the way that matters. It turns its head toward you again, and this time you notice something subtle. Its movements are careful, controlled, like it is choosing not to frighten you. That somehow makes it worse, or better, you can't decide. A student near you raises their hand. Professor Hagrid. "Yeah? How exactly do you see them?" The question hangs in the air. You realize others are thinking it too. Hagrid pauses. For once, his expression softens in a way that is not entirely cheerful. "Well," he says slowly, "you've got to see death, really." Silence again. Different this time. He seems to notice the tension and hurries on. But that's not what today's about. Today's about understanding him, not fearing him. You look back at the Thestrals. One of them has begun to walk along the fence line. Its hooves make almost no sound on the grass. You follow its movement. It stops directly in front of you. You are not sure how it chose that spot, but it feels deliberate. Its head lowers slightly. You realize with a strange jolt that it is waiting. Not for danger, for acknowledgement. You don't move. Neither does it. Something in your chest tightens, not with fear now, but with something more complicated. Curiosity braided with discomfort. Awareness you cannot unlearn once you have it. Hagrid's voice fades slightly into the background as he continues explaining something about diet and temperament, and how they prefer fresh meat that has already been prepared. You miss parts of it. The Thestral shifts its weight. You make a decision, small and internal. You raise your hand slightly, not touching, just visible. The Thestral exhales, a slow, fogging breath, then it turns away, as if satisfied. The rest of the lesson moves in fragments. Hagrid shows you how they respond to voice cues. He demonstrates feeding them. He explains their flight patterns, though watching them spread their wings makes your stomach dip in a way that is half awe, half instinctive disbelief. At one point, a Thestral lifts off the ground. The sound is like fabric tearing through air. The sky feels suddenly much larger. You find yourself tracking its movement longer than you mean to. When it lands again, it does so with impossible softness for something so large. By the time Hagrid signals the end of observation, the wind has shifted. The clouds overhead have thickened slightly, turning the sky into a layered sheet of pale grey. You feel like something in you has been rearranged, though you cannot name what. Students begin to disperse in uneven groups. You linger, not intentionally, just not moving as quickly as the others. Hagrid notices. He calls out, "You're all right there." You nod automatically. "Fine," you say, but you are not entirely sure that is accurate. He seems satisfied anyway. Good. They take a bit of getting used to. You look back once more at the paddock. The thestrals are settling again, folding their wings, returning to stillness. One of them is watching you. Or maybe not you specifically. It is difficult to tell. You turn away. The walk back toward the castle feels different than the walk out. The grounds are brighter now, more open, but you notice details you didn't before. The way shadows cling under hedges, the way the wind moves in uneven pulses across the grass, the distant silhouette of the forbidden forest like something breathing slowly in its sleep. A voice breaks your thoughts. You looked like you were trying not to think too hard back there. You glance sideways. It is the Ravenclaw boy. He keeps pace beside you without asking. "I wasn't thinking," you say. "That's usually worse," he replies. "You consider that." He adjusts his bag strap. "They're not as bad as they look," he adds after a moment. "You think so?" "I think most things at Hogwarts are less bad than they look," he says. "Or more complicated than they look. Either way, bad is rarely accurate." You glance back toward the paddock in the distance. "Do you think everyone sees them the same way?" He shakes his head immediately. "No," he says, "that's the point. You do not respond right away. The castle grows closer. Stone rising from the earth like it has always been there and always will be. You realize your hands are slightly cold. Not from weather, from something else. "Did you see it?" you ask suddenly. "The thestral?" You nod. He glances at you. "I think so," he says carefully. You are not sure what that means. He doesn't elaborate. Neither of you speak again until you reach the entrance steps. Inside the castle, everything feels warmer. Too warm, almost. The corridors are filled with movement, students changing classes, voices echoing off stone, the distant clatter of armor that always sounds like it is remembering something. You pause near a window overlooking the grounds. Outside, the paddock is barely visible now, just a shape of fencing and shadow. Somewhere beyond it, the thestrals move, unseen from here. A thought settles in your mind, quiet but persistent. You will not forget them easily, and perhaps that is the lesson. Not care, not fear, not even understanding, just awareness. Once gained, it does not leave. The first thing you notice when you return to this part of Hogwarts grounds a week later is that nothing has changed, and yet everything has. Hogwarts is like that in spring. The shifts are not dramatic. They do not announce themselves. Instead, they accumulate quietly, like sediment. A greener edge to the grass, a warmer tone to the stone, the sky holding its light a little longer each evening, as though reluctant to let go. You walk down the familiar path toward Hagrid's hut with the same uneasy anticipation as before, but it is no longer entirely fear. It has become expectation, and expectation is, in its own way, more complicated. The wind moves through the valley in soft rolling currents. You can smell damp earth again, but now it is mixed with something sharper. Flower pollen, crushed herbs, the faint sweetness of blooming gorse along the hillside. When you arrive, the group is already assembling. Same students, same uneven spacing, same mix of excitement and caution, but Hagrid is not standing by the paddock today. Instead, he is waiting beside a large wooden crate. It is moving, not violently, not chaotically, but definitely moving. Something inside scrapes lightly against the slats. A student near you takes a small step backward. "What is that?" someone whispers. Hagrid pats the crate affectionately. "Oh, don't worry," he says. "Nothing dangerous." The crate shudders slightly at that exact moment. He clears his throat. "Mostly not dangerous." That does not help. He beams anyway. "Today ye're meeting Nifflers." A pause. Then inevitably, "What's a Niffler?" someone asks. Hagrid looks delighted. "Oh, you're gonna love 'em." This is not reassuring either. When he opens the crate, the world briefly becomes chaos. A small, black-furred creature explodes outward like a thought that has refused to stay contained. It moves fast, too fast for something its size, darting across the grass in a blur of motion. Something metallic flashes in its paws. "Oi!" Hagrid calls. The Niffler ignores him completely. It beelines straight for a student's bag. "No, hey, that's mine." Too late. The bag is already open. The Niffler is already inside. A moment later it emerges wearing something that looks suspiciously like a spoon necklace. The student stares in horror. "That was my spoon." "It's still your spoon," Hagrid says helpfully, "just in a different context now. You stare at the creature. It is rounder than you expected. Softer, almost comical if it weren't currently committing theft with joyful determination. It looks up at you. You feel irrationally like it is assessing your pockets. You immediately shift your weight away. The Ravenclaw boy from last week is beside you again. "I think," he says calmly, "this is going to be worse than the Thestrals." "Because it steals things?" you ask. "Because it enjoys it," he replies. The Niffler suddenly lunges toward him. He sidesteps smoothly. It misses. It immediately changes direction and goes for someone else. Chaos resumes. Hagrid claps loudly. Right. Calm down, everyone." No one is calm, but everyone is listening. Mostly, these little fellas, Hagrid continues, are attracted to shiny things. Gold, silver, anything that glitters. A pause. He looks around meaningfully, which means Ye should probably not have anything shiny on Ye. Everyone slowly glances at each other's belongings. Too late for several of them. A scream erupts near the back of the group. "My watch! It has my watch!" The Niffler is already gone. You step slightly closer to the fence line, not because you feel brave, because standing still feels like an invitation. The ground here is uneven, softened by recent rain. You can feel the earth give slightly beneath your shoes as you shift. A niffler darts near your feet. You freeze. It pauses, looks up. You look down. A moment of mutual assessment passes between you. Then it chirps and continues on its way. You exhale slowly. "That one ignored you," says a voice beside you. The Ravenclaw boy again. "Is that good or bad?" you ask. "I think it means you have nothing interesting," he says. "You consider this. I'll take it," you reply. Eventually, Hagrid regains control of the class in the only way Hagrid ever really does, by accepting that control is temporary. He corrals the nifflers into a contained pen using a combination of enchanted barriers, persuasive shouting, and what looks suspiciously like bribery involving shiny coins. The creatures settle, mostly. One of them still attempts to tunnel under the fence. Hagrid ignores it. "Right," he says cheerfully, wiping his hands on his coat. "Now that we've met 'em properly, you're gonna try handling one each." Silence. This is a different kind of silence than before, a more unified one. "You're joking," someone says. "I am not," Hagrid replies. He begins distributing small weighted gloves. "They like digging," he explains. "So you just keep 'em moving gently. No sudden movements." "That feels like exactly what would cause sudden movements," someone mutters. When it is your turn, the niffler is placed into your hands. It is heavier than expected. Warm, wriggling with intent, it immediately tries to climb your arm. You adjust your grip carefully. It pauses, looks at you. You look back. It blinks, then resumes climbing. "You're doing fine," Hagrid calls. "I don't think it's listening," you reply. "That's normal." It is not clear whether that is reassuring. The Ravenclaw boy is a few feet away, managing his own niffler with what looks like cautious detachment. "How are you doing that?" you ask him. "I'm pretending it's a physics problem," he replies. "That doesn't seem like a solution. It reduces emotional involvement." The niffler on your arm suddenly attempts to leap. You catch it mid-air. Barely. It chirps, offended. You lower it back down. It immediately tries again. "This is exhausting," you say. "It's not personal," Hagrid calls. "They just love gold." "I don't have gold," you say. The niffler pauses, looks directly at your pocket. You slowly shift your stance. It lunges anyway. By the end of the exercise, you are slightly disheveled, mildly out of breath, and fairly certain that nifflers are a direct argument against the concept of personal ownership. Students gather in small clusters, returning borrowed items to one another. Someone is missing a shoe. Someone else is missing dignity. The Ravenclaw boy returns your earlier presents with a nod. "Less predictable than Thestrals," he says. "Much worse," you reply. "More entertaining, though." You consider the ruined grass, the scattered objects, the distant sound of Hagrid laughing at something that is definitely not under control. "Maybe," you admit. The final lesson of the term arrives almost without warning. Spring is fully established now. The grounds are no longer transitioning, they are settled into their new state. Flowers bloom in confident clusters. The trees are heavy with leaves. The air is warm enough that cloaks are often left open, forgotten. Hagrid announces the final class with unusual ceremony. Today, he says, we're going a bit bigger. No one likes the way he says that. Behind him, something shifts in the paddock again. But this time you already know what to expect. Or think you do. The shape that emerges is unmistakably a hippogriff. You feel the group collectively tense. It stands tall, feathers catching the sunlight in shifting shades of silver and slate. Its eagle-like front half is sharp, precise, dignified in a way that makes everything else feel clumsy by comparison. It looks at you, and you remember suddenly everything Hagrid said about respect, about bowing, about timing, about not dying. Hagrid smiles. Now ye remember the rules? Everyone nods too quickly. Good, he says. Off you go then. Approaching the hippogriff is not like approaching anything else. It is not fear exactly. It is awareness of consequence. You step forward slowly, heart steadying in a way you did not instruct it to. The hippogriff watches you. You stop at a respectful distance. Then bow. The world feels like it pauses. Wind shifts. Grass moves. Somewhere behind you someone whispers, "Is it working?" You do not look. You keep your head lowered. A moment passes, then another. Finally, a sound, a low measured movement. When you lift your head, the hippogriff has inclined slightly. Acknowledgement, acceptance. Your breath releases without permission. Hagrid's voice carries faintly behind you. Good, good, that's it. The ride, when it comes, is nothing like flying lessons. It is not chaotic. It is not mechanical. It is not even really controlled. It is something older. The ground falls away beneath you with a smooth inevitability that feels less like motion and more like transition. The wind becomes absolute. The world opens in all directions at once. You grip carefully, remembering instruction, but the hippogriff moves as if it does not need your assistance. Below, Hogwarts shrinks. The castle becomes a model of itself. The lake a shifting mirror. The forest a dark, breathing edge of green. You realize your fear has changed shape again. It is no longer fear of falling. It is fear of understanding how easily you could. The hippogriff banks gently. The sky tilts. You exhale slowly, letting go of tension you didn't realize you were holding. And for a brief, suspended moment, everything is exactly as it should be. Not safe. Not controlled, but right. When you return to the ground, the sun is lower than you expected. Spring light stretches long across the fields, turning everything gold at the edges. Students gather again, quieter now, changed in ways that are not immediately visible. Hagrid looks pleased. Well, he says, that went better than last time. No one asks what last time means. You begin walking back toward the castle with the others. The Ravenclaw boy falls into step beside you again. You were right, he says. About what? Everything being more complicated than it looks. You glance toward the horizon, toward the fading light over the grounds. Yeah, you say. I think it is. Behind you, Hagrid's hut grows smaller. Ahead, Hogwarts waits, solid, ancient, familiar. But you know now that it contains things that do not stay still. And neither do you.